Good morning. Hello, everybody at the Empowered Musician 2020 conference. I'm sure that you're all excited as I am. We are joined by some fantastic musicians this morning as we discuss the view from the performers in lockdown. We've had operas online, we've had people performing in car parks, socially distanced, choruses, musicians, and really, musicians are some of the most diverse and shape-shifting individuals on the stage. But how do we survive in a pandemic? And do we thrive, or do we find it even more difficult? Now, I'm going to introduce everybody to you, and they're going to say just a couple of lines about what they do, what their jam is, and maybe why they're here. Let's start with, we've got Lisa here, Lisa Jen Brown, over to you.
Good morning. My name's Lisa. I sing for the band Nine Bach. I also sing with Riff Reefs and Public Service Broadcasting. And yeah, I'm from Snowdonia, North Wales, and I've been quite busy in the pandemic.
Fantastic. I think somebody's calling. Maybe this is the job coming in. Is it the Met? We can hear some. No, we're fine. We're sorted now. These are the joys of working from home. I'm sure we're all very used to this. Over to you, Rakhi. Tell us about you.
Hi, I'm Rakhi Singh. I'm a violinist and I'm also music director of Manchester Collective, organisation that I founded with a friend and colleague, Adam Sabo, about 5 years ago. The premise is that it's very flexible. We program what we want and we play where we want, which means we've done a lot of musical collaborations with people from different musical genres, and we also work with filmmakers, dancers, visual artists, so it's very free.
Brilliant and very collaborative by the sounds of it. Fantastic. Well, please feel free to book me as a dancer at your own discretion. Jazz, talking about dancing, I was saying this morning that I was listening to some of your music and getting down and funky. Tell us a bit about you.
Hey everyone, I'm Jazz Kayser. I'm a drummer and a composer, band leader. So yeah, throughout this lockdown, I'm based in Southeast London. I've done a few live streams from home, and I've been gigging a lot with a house band in venue called Kansas Smithies in Shoreditch, and we had an audience out of lockdown, and then we had to do it virtually in lockdown, and yeah, been doing a lot of that over this time.
Making the most of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. And Gabby?
Hi everyone, my name's Gabriella Swallow and I'm a freelance cellist. Just before lockdown, I was touring with Rob Brydon, the comedian, and we hope to continue next year. I'm also in Nigel Kennedy's band, where we're meant to be in Russia. I keep thinking about where I was meant to be at the moment. And I run my own group called Gabriella Swallow and Her Urban Family. So lots of different things.
Fantastic. And lastly, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Stark. I'm co-founded the Multi-Story Orchestra. In 2011, we play concerts in car parks, and when I'm not there, I work in community music and opera.
Fantastic, yes. Now, looking at that idea of thriving or surviving, the actual pandemic has brought lots of different opportunities, and we've had to have contingencies upon contingencies, which sometimes can offer up more positive opportunities than maybe the originals were. So let's just ask you, Rakhi, what would you say you're pressing save on in terms of practice or in terms of the things that you've learned during lockdown?
Well, we had to sort of reevaluate the way we were thinking. We knew that we didn't want to just stop making stuff. So we've actually focused on creating a new kind of project, which we'll be announcing next month, and that will start in January. But that's very much something that has come out of these restrictions. So obviously we had to make sure that we could survive, and the Cultural Recovery Fund and the Arts Council grant really helped to ensure that. But then also we tried to start thinking much more laterally. I mean, we like to do that anyway, but to think about ways we can still make things and still create something that felt very much us and still very music based, but starting to engage with other mediums even more than we normally do. Absolutely.
I found that really interesting, the way that everybody has embraced some actual technology that otherwise they wouldn't have. And hopefully we've got that in our back pockets now. Lisa, I loved what you did with the actual outside terrain. I'm not sure if you, where you live, if you ever worry about social distancing because you're kind of in the hills and, you know, probably got lots of sheep and that kind of thing for company. What has this been like for you?
Well, yes, I mean, again, you know, I was thinking how I have, yes, being in the outside, obviously, and incorporating that into my music, which I'll explain later. But I've also, you know, played with my toys a bit more. So we haven't had any time, you know, and as Nine Bach, we've invested in a few equipment like the Helicon, a voice looper, and stuff like that. So I just haven't had time. It's been in a box and I've been touring without them. And then what it meant that rather than being a 6-piece band, we've had to go down back to a 2-piece band, and we're very drum and bass heavy. Now we've had to readapt all those songs, or how can we do them from the house, just me and my husband kind of thing. But that meant that I've been playing with my voice looper, playing with sound, and I've also taught myself how to use Ableton Live. So I've kind of been engineering myself, which is, I think, as a woman as well, that's really important that we get on top of it with technology and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's helped in that sense. But yeah, also being in the landscape and being in rural Wales, obviously the social distancing and also being in a band with your husband also helps as well, of course. But yeah, just really listening to the land, you know, I've been sort of just kind of like, yeah, just using the earth really in my music more. So we did like an immersive gig for WOMAD Festival, and that was all recorded in the bowels, in the belly of the earth almost. So we went to do into caves and stuff, and old slate mining sort of quarry hospitals that's now a ruin, and sort of just brought all of that into our music. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been slowed down and started listening to the country, listening to the earth.
It looked awesome. It made me think that you could do like a virtual reality kind of, next time we could all kind of just be in the hills with you.
Yeah, and it's so possible. Also using that natural, that you had nothing to sing to. As a vocalist, of course, you love your voice sort of drenched in sort of like this, you know, reverb, delay, whatever. Can't have that. You know, you just have a microphone and it's so unforgiving, like you just have nothing to sing to if you're in the mountain, for example. But I was particularly enjoying the caves because you could just hear the drips, and the reverb was quite ugly in a good way, you know. It's not, and so that was quite challenging, and just sort of, yeah, like, oh, my voice is like that. Yeah, so I think, you know, we should all be doing that.
I think we all become so obsessed with quality, don't we, in terms of what our output is. And I know at the beginning of lockdown, sometimes you kind of had to blink twice to look at what this kind of pixelated figure, to see who it was who was playing. You're like, oh yes, it's Tasman Little, fantastic. But we've obviously got a lot better as we've gone on, and these are definitely things we can press save on for the future. Jas, let me ask you, how involved in the technical side of your production are you, and has that changed during the pandemic?
Oh yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm really feeling what you're saying, Lisa, about the kind of like hearing your own voice, like even on the drums, just being so much more aware of how you sound, you know. that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of the production side of things, yeah, I've always been kind of into, like, you know, using DAWs. Like I was using Logic before, and my degree in college was contemporary writing and production. So I've been quite into that. So it hasn't been too overwhelming, but luckily when I've been doing live streams at home, one of my housemates is actually like an very into like electronic side of things. So he's been taking the control in kind of hooking up the OBS with the Ableton and all of that. So we've had a lot of fun actually getting all of that thing together. But the other stuff I've been doing has been with the Jazz Refreshed gig and the Live in the Woods with the OCM and with Kansas Smitty's. So they've actually been in charge, and they've been really on top of getting the live stream together with quality cameras and quality sound, and really focus on that. So I've actually had a good experience being able to just show up and worry about the playing, you know, which has been really amazing, because I think towards the end of lockdown, a lot of people had spent a lot of time getting that together, you know, so that they can actually do quality gigs, like you were saying earlier about just taking the time to put thought into it, so that when you do it, it's quality, you know. And I guess, yeah, this year, people are really taking advantage of this online live streaming concerts. You know, I guess some people are getting tired of it, or some people are loving it. Who knows? You know, there's pros and cons to everything. But yeah.
Absolutely. The appetite for the online platform has kind of wavered and bulged over the months. And also, we'll talk about it a bit more in terms of how we make this profitable as well. Like, how do we make it marketable and something where we can actually get paid our dues, and we're not just, you know, singing or playing for fun. I think that's tricky. Just a quick question for us muggles. Jazz, is it DNW, did you say?
DAW, yeah, DAW. I guess some people say DAW, some people say like digital, what's it called? Digital audio workstation or something.
Oh, fabulous. And does that help you produce your music?
Yeah, that's the software, is like Logic and Ableton and what's it called? Pro Tools and all of that. GarageBand or whatever comes on the Mac. Yeah, stuff like that.
Other doors are available, ladies and gentlemen, but please feel free to say for free. Now, over to you, Chris. We actually collaborated a bit during lockdown because we both work at Blackheath Hall's community opera, where we try to get fantastic professionals together with community singers and players in the orchestra. And we were meant to be presenting a live opera, which was obviously curtailed by you know what. What were the challenges for you in terms of finding a solution, and how different did you find it working with amateur musicians and singers in terms of the government guidelines? How easy was that to juggle with?
Well, I think in terms of the government guidelines, more recently, you know, it's been so much harder to get amateur groups together than it has professional groups, as we already all know. And there's been a lot of kind of inconsistency in messaging, which has made it very hard to keep abreast of what is actually allowed in terms of getting amateur groups together. In terms of the project that we worked on, you know, it was another one of these things where we're building a huge amount of kind of click track material that will allow everybody to go away and record their bits and hang together. And you know, as always, the real challenge of it is finding a way to build something that can feel anything resembling organic music making, which is, and it kind of, I'm just scratching the surface of the kind of technology that Jazz is talking about, and yeah, that has been the main thing I've learned from it, is just, you know, sitting and learning how to fiddle around with Logic. But it just feels so far away from like anything where you have the give and take of understanding each other. And like with Nicky and I trying to work out things about tempos or ebb and flow in, you know, big expansive music is so time consuming. And I think, you know, not to be negative, but the main like things that I feel like I would take away from this is just like renewed awareness of how amazing it is to have that give and take in real life, and how much in a world where it can feel like technology cannot seem to offer everything that you might want, that actually there really is so much value in all of this live stuff. And we, you know, it's our job to kind of show that and talk about that and demonstrate that.
Absolutely. I think it can be easy for us to become blasé about what live music does for the body. I know that when I went to see my first, I'd done a bit of performing myself, but when I went to see the first show, I was really moved. I had this kind of visceral reaction just to hearing people creating in that moment, which is something I think we can all take for granted. One of our first musical outings was together, Gabby, at glorious Mary Bevan, MBE, her lovely Music at the Tower series, when we got together and we did a little Benjamin Britten number. What was that like for you?
Well, obviously a total delight to accompany you, Nicky. That goes without saying.
You have to say that, love. You're here.
With Dylan on piano. I mean, it was fabulous because I think it was the first time both of us had heard a round of applause, and you know, in real life, and it was so gorgeous because it kind of it was as British as you could get. It was, you know, pretty terrible weather. I think we were holding tarpaulin over Dylan by the end of it. But it was, I think after all of those months online, it also just brought us back to the basics of, yeah, we do need each other, the audience and the performer, in that sort of, in the same space. So it was very, very emotional, incredibly moving, just to socialize with us, you know, to actually all be together and chat and catch up. That's the thing I found so profound about that series, because for me, lockdown had been personally very lonely because I'm the only adult in the house. So already people kept sort of saying, oh, we're all in this together. I was like, no, you're not. I don't have that other person to share what the fact that we're going through history here, another adult. I'm there trying to make sure it's all okay for my children every day. And then on the next level, to be a musician in this, which again, we're not in it all together with everyone else because other people have been furloughed, other people are doing, you know, have that engagement of their work still. So for me, that was the first opportunity to actually discuss what had been happening with people who are in the same boat. And so I think on that level, it was just, it was so important for all of us. And the fact that the audience was generally made up of musicians as well. It was just a lovely chance to see everyone again in the flesh.
Absolutely. And I think when there is a listener and when there is a music maker, it has that special connection. I think as long as we always have that, then there will be that special magic, which is obviously very difficult to produce during a pandemic. But it's interesting what you're saying about, you know, everybody being in the same boat, but everybody's boat is a different shape.
Yes.
In terms of, you know, actual empathy for people's different situations. I think we've all grown to have that. And especially when it comes to mental health, I know personally, I was, you know, always almost doing a drinking game every time, you know, an opera came up that I should have been doing. It was like, oh, down we go. And I think for some people that has been a real issue. Does anybody want to share some of their kind of mental health journeys? Sorry, awful word. But the kind of thing which you've maybe discovered about yourself in terms of what music making feels to you and how you dealt with that loss, perhaps, of music.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a musical in Theatr Clwyd when Boris's horrendous speech about nobody go to the theatres, please, or any gigs, meaning that we had to make the decision, you know, do you remember that week when it was just like, so what now? And we were teching on a Monday and we were opening on the Friday, and you can imagine we've been working for years actually on this project and had been heavily rehearsing it for 2 or 3 months. And the lights went down on the theatre, and that was that. We all left, and we were embarking on a 2 or 3 month tour, and no, nothing. So I came home, then the school stopped, and then I became a teacher, and I was just like, I don't know how to do this. I don't understand your maths. I don't understand your schoolwork. And I became a little bit like, in my own head kind of thing. I'm just like, I'm not a teacher. I'm a musician. I'm an actor. I can't do this. And then there was that sort of, when my husband suggested we would live stream from the house every week, you know, from the heart, and just kind of like open up to all our fans, I was like, what? I'm in my 90 days and days and days after each other. I can't. And then I was like, there'll only be 5 people watching, so it'll be fine. And so I'd kind of do it. And then there was like 500-600 people watching live. It was like, oh, so next week you couldn't use that as an excuse. But then what I was realizing, that I was being a bit selfish really, because our fans were really enjoying it. So people would message and saying, this has been the highlight. I look forward to every Thursday night. And then I was getting like almost like dissolving a bit into it and going, actually, this is fine. My kids are involved. It's a family thing we all do together. So like you say, it was a journey in that sense, where it was like really sort of scrambled, and then you kind of felt yourself relaxing into it. And we did it like consecutively for 10, 11 weeks kind of thing. Every Thursday night it became a thing. And, you know, and so I realized then a bit too late, it was quite special what we were doing as a family, because my kids, we couldn't do it without them. They're only 9 and 11, but we heavily depended because, like you said before, the quality was important, the sound was important. So we used about 5 different cameras. We researched a fantastic thing called Switcher Studio, which kind of, you know, works on the Wi-Fi, but means that you kind of live stream and multicam live. And obviously the sound was, so we worked about 4 weeks before we realized this is of quality and now we're ready to do it, kind of thing. So yeah, and just sort of, we couldn't have done it without them because my daughter was directing it all and just selecting all the shots, a bit like you're seeing in front of you now. So she would be kind of directing that shot into that shot. Oh, Martin's playing a solo, camera on the guitar, you know. And then it was like, oh, no one's singing now, I'll just select that shot, which is a picture of the mountains because the camera was outside on the coffee table. And just realized, I'm so proud of you, you know, because everyone was in the house together and it was all, and then it was always a moment on a Thursday night where I'd look at everyone and go, I'm really proud of you all, you know. And there was that sort of love before the next morning, everything was like this.
Absolutely, yeah. But a moment of joy and of a bit of collaboration together with your family, that's really special, and you'll always have those memories. I'm sure we can all look at moments like that we've had. We just had a question here from one of our viewers. Some musicians offered music for free during the first lockdown. Do you think it's becoming more difficult to start charging people for online performance now? This is interesting. Rakhi, have you got any views on this?
I think it's something that is definitely needing to be discussed at the moment. I guess it almost plays into sort of the whole streaming discussion as well. You know, for so many years now, people have just been able to access music for free and will often question paying 79 pence for a song, but buy a £2.50 coffee. And to me, that balance seems so wrong when we know how much time and effort goes into creating all of this stuff. So I guess as an industry, we're going to have more conversations about how to monetize the online stuff and not be afraid of doing that. To be honest, we haven't found an answer for it yet. We haven't engaged with live streaming. We used all of our archives of the concerts to put up during the first lockdown. So we didn't need to spend anything in creating them because it was already there. But we're sort of now thinking about how to tackle this problem. But actually, I don't have any answers yet. I think it's just a conversation that has to be prominent and present, like with everyone involved in the music industry, actually.
And it's interesting in terms of the way that we enjoy music. I've actually loved seeing people up close and personal. I mean, most people, myself included, are not HD ready, but it's that kind of thought of having, you can really see somebody breathing or somebody, you know, imbibing their music and their instrument, which is special. And maybe there's something we can do with that for the future. But I mean, certainly singers are best heard from a distance, you know, especially opera singers. They're like bagpipes, you know, heard from a distant hill. Maybe we should go and join you, Lisa, and you can pop me on a hill, I'll sing away. But that financial burden is difficult. And does anybody want to kick us off with what the actual financial situation has been like for them personally? Gabriella?
Well, for me, as I said, when I said my little opener, it was touring all year, so 12 months of touring. I was barely going to be at home. So one little point about that with the mental health thing is that I think for the last few years, I've spent years sort of preparing myself and my children for life as a touring musician. And it's so interesting that I didn't have that time to prepare mentally for being, as you said, Lisa, a primary school teacher at home. My kids are exactly the same age, so I feel your pain. Rakhi and I went to Cheetham School of Music for 9 years, and I don't think music school also prepared us best for basic maths. So I've been very challenged. I think with me and finance, obviously with all my work, I only had one contract that actually supported me, and they paid. So that was, and I will always be eternally grateful for that generosity from the promoter, because they didn't have to. It was all very carefully contracted that there was a kind of get out of jail free card, but I got one bit of help. I monetized early on because I didn't have a choice. And it was a really strange one because I didn't have also time to get depressed. We were selling out to 1,000, 1,500 people a night with Rob Brydon, and Rob himself felt that he couldn't continue with that audience size and be socially conscious. So he stopped the tour the same week. Actually, we were on sound check in Guildford when we decided to shut. And so I think I spent the next day in bed, thoroughly depressed. And then the next day I put something on Twitter, just saying to people, well, this is what's happening, because I think social media was our way to tell people what our situations were. And I just sort of said, okay, any ideas? What do I do? And someone said, oh, well, Gabby, it's Mothering Sunday coming up. I'd much rather spend the same amount as I would do on some flowers to have you send a little greeting to my mum. So I thought, oh, well, I can do that. And of course, because I've got no business head whatsoever, I said to people, just choose any piece of music you like and I'll record it, because that felt more authentic to me. All my business friends were like, Gabby, you're crazy. Give one romantic piece, give one jazz, one classical, stick it behind a paywall, no freedom of choice. But I said, no, I can't do that. So for £25 to have me, do a musical postcard, it probably was about 10 hours of research, looking up the most abstract American folk songs around the world and everything. But I got the orders in. And by Mothering Sunday, I got 70 orders. So I sort of thought, oh, my bills are okay now next month. And I went through Patreon, because I think that is an interesting one about how you feel as a musician asking for help. And I've never had to before. Like all of us, we've all worked incredibly hard. We're not charity. We're not charity, but we've been put in this position through no fault of our own. And we do have to ask for help. And Patreon seemed a good way where people felt that they could support us and support our project. So I did a subscription on there. I got some help from the self-employed, which I was very grateful for and very, very lucky. But also I was very careful, and I started, saying to people, well, yes, I'm very happy to play at your dinner party online, but this is what it will cost. And you still get very, very strange people who don't believe that this is a hobby, this is for fun. And those people haven't left us, sadly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the interesting aspects, is that we all have done our Edith Piaf moments on the streets with a hat, trying to get some money. But now, we've all trained for many years. And when it comes to it, how much of us actually perform for the joy of collaboration and that kind of thing? And when does the money actually get involved? And it has to be involved at some point, because it comes down to the nuts and bolts of surviving. In terms of the government provision, which sometimes has been kind of one size fits nobody, it's been quite a frustrating time for musicians. Jas, have you got anything to talk about in this terms of surviving as a musician during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm bouncing off what everyone's saying. I'm just like totally agreeing with everyone. I think generally so many things to touch on. I mean, in lockdown, it's like a roller coaster of emotions, in terms of mental health, and also what when came back to me was the protests, that we had like in the middle of lockdown for Black Lives, and it was like long overdue anyway. Like, it's so important that we do that kind of thing, but everything, politically like taken over during that time too is just so overwhelming, especially for musicians. And I think also as artists, we have a big responsibility to kind of represent, the political movements of the time and all of that. Not that we have to, but obviously a lot of people feel that relates, and it does relate. So that was a big struggle. But then in terms of, I guess as a musician, mental health and all of that, you have to kind of have a lot of self-worth. And I think, I mean, I'm only 24 now, but I've only been a professional musician. And I guess I only see myself as a professional musician for the past kind of few years, because I only graduated from college like a couple of years ago. So it's been a really hard transition from being like, a 17-year-old who'll take any gig, any exposure, any opportunity for free, to now, having to pay my own bills and having to survive and live on my own without relying on my family anymore. But it's really difficult, because it's, it takes a lot of kind of like talking to yourself, or or I think as musicians too, we look, well, between me personally, it's kind of selfish, but I look for validation, you know, like you're saying, when you have an audience and they clap for you after a gig, it's like, you're like, yeah, that was killing. I know that, you know, it's like, that's them telling you that it's good, you know. So obviously with the live streams too, when you don't get that response, it can be a bit, you know, you get home, you're like, oh, you're already home, you don't need to get home, you're like, was that good? Do I suck? You know, or like,
absolutely.
It's really awful. And I think it shouldn't be like that. And I guess we shouldn't think like that, and we shouldn't degrade ourselves like that. But when you have a society that, you know, will put up, you know, say things online like musicians are the first people that can switch their careers or just go get a proper job now and make real money, it's very difficult to take yourself seriously and to kind of, you know. So I think it is, even before lockdown, this whole, you know, financial thing and charging people, you know, a solid amount for gigs and or whatever little work you do for people, or when you're teaching and stuff, it's always been an issue. But when you're selling your music too, it's forever an issue. I don't know how we're gonna get to the bottom of that, you know.
Well, I think there is a view that musicians are adaptable, and certainly as a community, I think we've all felt the strength from each other in terms of empathy and what we have to offer. But there's a certain point where your hustle can only go so far, and there's only so many things you can, you know, think of to do. Has anybody actually taken on side jobs in terms of, you know, Waitrose delivery vans, or, you know, making cards, or has anybody done any of that?
I applied for a job at Co-op.
Fabulous. Were you underqualified?
Yeah, I was underqualified, yeah.
You can have a gig behind my delicatessen any day of the week, Jazz. Now,
cheers, Nicky, legend.
let's look at another question we have here from one of the viewers. Have any of the panel felt overwhelmed seeing what other musicians are creating and struggling to find the motivation to make something themselves? So I wonder if this is maybe a question too about whether it's all the same faces offering, you know, certainly in the classical world, you know, we see lots of the front runners doing things, and lots of other people, maybe it's the music's not being shared around, or a feeling of not having the motivation to do it. Lisa, have you got something to say on this?
Yeah, I was just thinking earlier on how I think musicians, we've been supporting each other. So I wouldn't normally maybe listen to live streams, but because you felt like we've been buying tickets for other people's streams. I mean, we've been streaming for free all for 12 weeks, but then that kind of generated paid streams because we were active, I guess, all those weeks. Then so that's kind of a positive thing. Yes, we didn't charge any of our fans through the whole, you know, through the whole time, but then we did then have a couple of promoted gigs where we were paid for. So that's one thing that I do feel that we have been supporting each other in that sense, because then that's made us go, oh, bless, they're doing a live gig, let's pay a £5 to what, like, which we normally wouldn't. And we've certainly been buying more music to be supportive as well. But then also I think that jealousy is a terrible, negative, horrible word, but when there's no denying that feeling of when you're feeling stuck and alone in the house, and then you're seeing other people doing, oh, they're doing this, oh, they're doing that, they're doing this. There's that feeling of like, I don't know, just like your belly just goes, oh, you know, and I'm stuck here being a teacher for my kids or whatever. I mean, I think it's a really complex thing. Like, I'm split in the middle between like all that positivity amongst musicians that I know, I've seen it and I felt it myself. I just want to support, and I felt extremely supportive. But there's no denying that it's frustrating. All this thing, you're going to write the best album in the pandemic. This is your time to be creative. This is your time to write the best thing you've ever. And all I've done is swam in ice cold rivers, and at a point I hadn't, you know, and just kind of stared at the mountains and just not felt creative at all. Then you feel like a failure because other people are writing the best work they've done. Other bands are bringing out a single a week, and you just think, how are you doing that? And so there's no denying that it's a mixed bag of emotions, or of feeling totally overwhelmed and underwhelmed and like a failure because you're not creating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is that pressure can be crippling, but it's maybe a feeling that not feeling okay is okay. And I think we've all began to really see actual interest in each other's stories when it comes to that. You're talking a bit about what it feels like feeling good to make music, and we've got a question here about feel-good stories in the press, about how there is a human need for music, and whether we think this is something that will carry forward as we can hopefully get together in places more often. Chris, do you think that's true? This is something which is going to snowball a bit. People realise what music is in their lives now.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel that there is that people are talking about the value of these things, and you know, people talk about it with all arts, and like with the amount that they've lent on TV and things during this time. I mean, it's part of, like, within classical music, I'm probably within music more broadly in this country, it's always existed on this, you know, quite delicate ecosystem that hasn't, you know, didn't have a lot of give. And you know, with the things that we've been talking about with streaming and how one finds a way to monetize this work, it was already right on this cusp. And you do have the feeling that even with this kind of awareness of its value, in like you know, amongst like the population, it needs such a gear shift in the kind of politics behind it in order to translate that feeling to something that can really allow the music world to thrive. So I think that there is, I mean, I think there is a lot of awareness of the value, but there is a big way to go to turn that into something that can be kind of lent on and make the music world more resilient, should something like this threaten it again anytime soon.
And in terms of the feel-good factor within amateur musicians, how important do you think music making is to them in terms of a social construct, as a lifeline perhaps to their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think people thought that they enjoyed music, but you take something away and you realize how much you're leaning on something. And like with the kind of mental health things that we've been talking about, I mean, I know that I personally kind of link my mental health too much to the kind of arc of a project, and the kind of thing that Jazz was talking about with the you know, not getting the catharsis at the end of that arc is really complicated. You know, when you work very hard for, you know, a couple of months or something for something that's online, and that you just never interact with anybody else, and you never have that release at the end of the project. It's complicated.
It's frustrating. I did one of those lovely Wigmore Live concerts, and we were just all gagging for a drink at the end. We looked everywhere, went down to the old Cock and Bull or whatever that pub's called, and eventually we just went to a coffee shop, individually, socially distanced, and hung on a street corner like some very well-dressed vagrants. And I think that was so frustrating. And I think it's just that moment of collaboration. Anybody else, I'm sure, you know, businessmen after a big board meeting, we all do. It's that kind of tension and release feel. Rakhi, you wanted to chip in there.
Yeah, I wanted to add to the how will it carry forward. I think what's been interesting about this whole time is how, especially in the classical music world, we've had to reevaluate the way we present things. We've all learned more about the digital side of things, but also now is the chance to reevaluate how we present things live, because fingers crossed, we will get back to that. I have to believe that, otherwise it's too depressing. But I feel like within the classical music world, there's a lot of context where we don't show our love and passion for this music enough, and the way it's presented doesn't communicate that enough. And so hopefully, I mean, I have felt for quite a while that our world has needed to be shaken up, and for all the devastation that is going on, I think there is chance for a real skin to be shed and new ways of communicating to emerge from this, because now we have to really fight for what we love and what we believe about this music, and we have to be the new ambassadors for it.
Does anybody have personal experience in terms of finding new online audience for their music which they didn't have previously? I mean, I've just discovered Jazz, and I'm going to be getting down to her dirty beats, you know, very often. So I'm one of yours, Jazz. Anybody else?
We've certainly gained hundreds more followers by doing this live streaming, because obviously what happens when you do a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live or all these things where these platforms, that people share it and then their friends can see it. So it's almost made it more accessible. So like, because we were having like about 500 people tuning in live every night, but then that would get shared. So people would catch up with it the next day and the next day and the next day. And in the end, there was like 170,000 people had watched your gig. Now we can go and play in a venue to 150 people. You know, we're a Welsh language band who tours internationally, but it's very problematic, especially in Britain. The language barrier is the problem here, nowhere else. But in England, for example, it's hard to get the audience coming, because people get oh, it's Welsh language band, I won't understand. But what's happened is that we've gained so much more exposure within the UK, I guess. I mean, there were people watching us from all over the world, because we have toured all over the world, and of course they could watch us every week, which was great for them, and there was so much enthusiasm for it. But we certainly gained hundreds more followers on Facebook, you know, by doing it. So that's a positive thing, like doing these online gigs. Like, and like you say, they're not easy. You don't get anything at the end apart feeling of like, was that all right? Did it glitchy? Did it even happen?
Yeah, somebody clap. You're going to train your pets to clap for you.
Yeah, and also doing it with the kids as well. You know, they were getting agitated by the end, and of course you were just trying to be professional, and then they would just go, oh, when you would start singing a song that they weren't keen on, and you just like, stop, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of internally. So the feeling at the, because it's not professional, isn't it? Is it singing from your living room with your dogs and cats all over the leads, and you know, scared that the dog's going to unplug something, and you know, but you are professional, and so at the end you're exhausted because you've kept all that, like, you know, and you get nothing at the end.
Absolutely. I mean, I was there at the beginning of lockdown, strapping my iPad with masking tape to a music stand. I mean, I'm sure we've all got those, you know, Blue Peter badge moments where we've done similar things, and we're slightly more sophisticated now. I thought it was interesting what you said about the footfall of Facebook and that kind of thing, in terms of people coming across classical music almost by accident, perhaps, during the pandemic. And I think there is the actual outlets for classical music in this country to a wider audience. I've been involved in crossover music and things in the past, tends to be over sugared and kind of very saccharine, maybe on Britain's Got Talent, somebody playing, you know, some Elgar, hopefully, or, you know, something. Do we feel that actually just presenting music at what level it is, at a high level, by good people, actually is enough, and actually could give us something exciting for the future, something that we've gained from this experience?
I was just going to say, I've also been involved on the dark side of populist classical music, and the first live stream gig I was part of in the Albert Hall, and with Catherine Jenkins and Jess Gillum, and we did a couple of duets. And I think we've also always never should forget about the popular. I think it's really important. And the thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands of people that tuned in for that VE Day celebration really did show what, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of Daily Mail readers really enjoyed that. It also, interestingly, did cause jealousy from my peers, going back to that, because I was the first one. And the way it came about, which is you wanted an amusing anecdote, Nicky. This is quite I got an email. We're sort of talking 7 weeks into hard lockdown, where it was pajama stage. I had not seen another adult for that amount of time. It's definitely in my pajamas. And I got an email saying, we're so looking forward to seeing you in the Albert Hall in 2 days. And I just said, I think there's been a mistake. I'm semi-retired now. Have you got the wrong person? And there was a number. And I called the number and I just said, hello, it's Gabriella Swallow here. I've got a very strange email saying that you're looking forward to seeing me on Thursday. It's Tuesday. What is this about? He said, oh, you haven't been getting the emails. I said, no. And then he said, are you free on Thursday? I said, I'll just check. Made like a rustling paper sound. And it was through Decca I got it. And basically I'd been left off the email chain. And they said that, you know, what the gig was, and it was a live stream for VE Day. It was the first time the Albert Hall had been opened up. And I said, of course, I'd love to do it. And the car came to pick me up, and it was so strange just being in the venue for the first time, where social distancing, I mean, they were obviously unbelievably safe because it was really, really early. And it was very sad because Jess Gillam and I had just done an album together in February, and I was delighted to see her, but we could only FaceTime from the dressing room next door to each other and sort of show each other our outfits and sort of say, oh yeah, you look great, go for that one. But that whole thing, I think, my point really is that it did show how important music is to the masses. And then with obviously the stuff that we did, Nicky, and everything else, and when we do watch the Wigmore Hall, and these new audiences, I think it's just been absolutely great. So we should never sort of be too snooty about it. Absolutely, music is music in the end, and that's a lovely story for the memoirs. Yes. Interesting what you were saying about something happening very quickly. I've noticed that because of all these government guidelines changing so often, that there is a feel of, okay, we don't know what we want, but actually now we want everything and we want it yesterday. I think when we're so used to, as musicians, preparing for months and months, have you found this more reactive atmosphere stressful or freeing in terms of your music practice? Well, in terms of what I do, sometimes I have to be in a studio in an hour. And I think it's for session artists, and, you know, we're not like an opera production where it's been in the book for a year. So I think that the timetable still suits me personally. Yeah. Rakhi, have you been jumping into opportunities?
Actually, I find recording for online stuff quite difficult. Like I'm quite hard on myself and don't necessarily feel that confident doing it. So I guess sometimes there's opportunities that if I know I haven't got enough time to feel comfortable about it, I haven't done them. So I haven't had loads of opportunities like that flooding in, let's be honest, but I've got colleagues who have been asked to do some online recitals and not been allowed to replicate the repertoire or duplicate the repertoire. So they've had to learn completely new programs, and that's placed them under incredible stress and pressure. And doing something for online is different than doing it for a live concert. I think we have these classical music demons. I mean, I certainly have, from years of being told that you have to be perfect. You know, we're not perfect. And so I'm constantly trying to shed them, and doing stuff online doesn't really help it. I guess what it does help is a certain acceptance, and you know, people are actually a lot kinder on you than you are on yourself. But I think, yeah, it has placed a lot of pressure on people to learn lots of new stuff or feel like they can't repeat things. And I think in some ways that's quite unfair, to not be allowed to play the same piece. And in some cases it's made people say no to work, when actually if there was a bit more flexibility and empathy in that respect, then people might have engaged with it more. Yes. Well, I think certainly classical music has been maybe accused of not being particularly flexible in the past, but seeing massive shifts in terms of, you know, the Royal Opera House and, you know, orchestras having to move
on a sixpence to a new plan hopefully will bring some more freedom in the future. I'd just like to encourage the viewers who are watching, hello viewers, if you'd like to ask any questions, if you'd like to use the Slido feature on your Zoom, and we're going to be having a question and answer section in a wee while. So please do pop us your questions. We've got some coming up here, which we'll deal with shortly. Just in terms of, again, just the practicalities of the pandemic, what that's been like. Lisa, you were talking about, you know, diversifying, and it feels as if the government system and also the lack of quarantine freedom that other professions have had, it feels as if we've almost been penalized for being flexible. You know, people have not been able to get the government money because they might be, you know, half of a teacher and, you know, half of a performer and all that kind of thing. So many people have fallen through the cracks, which is a huge injustice. And we've all, you know, been campaigning and lobbying to make this different. Do you think we've made enough noise about this to try and get things changed? Jas, have you got an idea about this?
Oh, I don't know. Sorry, you were like talking about it and I was still really thinking about it.
I have a mesmerizing voice, don't worry.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, Nicky. It's really
don't worry if you don't. Anybody else?
I think we've been penalised really badly in the sort of in the creative world, in you know, live music, live concerts, theatres. You're allowed to go 10-pin bowling, but you're not allowed to go to the theatre. I mean, it's just so mixed. You know, I remember the artistic director of Theatre Clwyd, Tamara, saying, you know, so why don't we just come to the theatre or go to a 10-pin bowling and pretend we're 10-pin bowling, but then we'll just make a show and that would be fine, kind of thing. Yeah. You know, so it's been, it's so hard, isn't it? It's so hard because you won't be allowed to fill a concert hall or a theatre, and therefore it's not financially viable. And you know, performing together, you'd have to be, you know, distance. And it's just, I mean, of course we understand this and we're all sort of, you know, want to make a difference and keep everyone safe. And so it's just, it feels like we've been crushed in what we're doing in that sense. And it's, but you can sit on a plane. I don't know.
I just had a, sorry to interrupt, Lisa, but I just had a big patch in Japan cancelled in February. Which is very disappointing because of the safe passage for travellers not being extended to musicians. But you can be an elitist athlete, an actor, and it's just like, it's ridiculous. And you know, that 2 weeks work gone, which has already been rescheduled from April. And I mean, in every sense, it just feels we've been terribly mistreated with all of that. It's just not fair.
Absolutely. There's a kind of general impression that musicians are, you know, artisans who just kind of, you know, ride unicorns across the stage, but actually the respect value of what we offer in terms of financial actual money for the government and the service which we offer to our environment and to our country is often overlooked, and that's frustrating. Rakhi?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that how I really remember the Saturday morning that the pubs opened, and they opened at sort of 7 a.m. and by 11 o'clock there were people drunk walking around, and I just couldn't fathom, I still can't, how that's okay, but then to have people very carefully placed in a theatre or a room or concert hall or something is not okay. It's far safer environment. And it's sort of, I guess it showed to me the priorities of our current government and how they view the arts and that experience. Who knows if they ever go to any concerts themselves, I don't know.
Well, I did a performance, one of the first socially distanced outside operas at Glyndebourne, and Oliver Dowden did come, and I did sing most of my lines directly to him. So hopefully he was listening. And we just got a couple of questions here, gang. Do we feel that when we return to normal, how are we going to capitalize on these new audiences? Lisa, for example, have you got a database where people have had to log on, so you've got their details? Are you going to send some Welsh round robins to people?
Yeah, no, not, I mean, not yet. but that's a really good idea, Nicky. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess what's with social media, once they followed you, then I guess they get all the information in that sense. But you're right in there, like how do we capture that? How do we utilize that? And how do we sort of, you know, make sure that support network that we've been, you know, that we have felt so supported by our fans kind of transfers then to, you know, when we can tour and when we can do live gigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think also when we can, I think we will be so ready to go out and enjoy live music. There's nothing more than I fancy is like a big, massive dance, you know, in that sense. I'm craving for a rave or something, you know, like just to sort of like have unity and people in a room together, people together feeling the same and like just feeling that passion for the music. I think we will be ready, and I think when we can, we will as musicians kind of feel that warmth from an audience, I think, which is something to look forward to. That
shared experience feeling. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I'm sure Jazz will put on some nice dance music for us. We'll all be ready for that.
Oh yeah.
Totally. Now, looking as Christmas is on its way, ladies and gentlemen, if we could put something on our wish list for 2021 in terms of how our lives could be different, obviously past the obvious, you know, being able to perform. Is there anything you would like to see differently? Anybody got a Christmas wish?
It's that certainty. That's what I would wish for. That when I've been booked for something, it's going to happen. It's just such a simple thing. But the anxiety of, will I be on the plane? Will I not? Will it happen? I just want to know that nothing's certain in life. We know that. But it certainly has been more certain than it has done this year. And even now, my contracts for next year, all my tours have been rescheduled, but they all have a clause which say 2 weeks notice, and it says, if the theatres are socially distanced, the tour will be cancelled and you won't be paid.
Yeah.
And it's next year, which is going to be the interesting one, because yes, I'm totally with you, Lisa. I want that unity too, but I think we're still a little bit, as soon as the vaccines, it's a complicated process. And I think, yeah, just knowing I'm going to be turning up and other people will be too is going to be my Christmas wish list.
Absolutely. And I think my Christmas wish, if I can just whirl in here, is to have something similar and actually to learn in terms of infrastructure from this situation. So we have something in paper about pandemics, because the force majeure is just far too vague. You know, I think we all think about, you know, landslides and flooding and things when we think of force majeure, but this actual situation, the amount of operas which I've learned, which have taken 4 months to learn in Czech or Russian, and then for it not to happen, and then not to have a government standard in terms of what people get paid for. Do you get 10%? Do you get 20%? And some people have been okay, they've dodged, you know, a death train in terms of finances, and other people haven't, and there seems to be a lot of uncertainty. So yes, that's my wish. Anybody else's wishes? Rakhi, yes.
I wish I could switch off all of the music for 24 hours so people would really realize how much it contributes to their life. Film, television, retail, cafe. I mean, I know we're not in restaurants and cafes, and actually I feel like there's too much music in restaurants and cafes, but to really give people a sense of our worth and our value and what we collectively contribute to society and to people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. An artistic blackout. Yeah, I'm sure we'd all do that. That's not a bad idea. Chris?
Yeah, like just to touch on something that Rakhi said before about, you know, shaking up this music world. I think it would be so this pandemic has shown, like, yes, how classical music is kind of undervalued politically, but also exposes how much you know, there is a feeling that it's for a certain type of person and is being, you know, held by a certain group of people, and as classical musicians, I think that it has been shown that we have such a big job to reach out as widely as we can and to demonstrate how amazing a thing it is to a wider group of people. And I hope that this shaking up allows that, you know, that the immediate kind of pressure of needing to demonstrate the value of this thing will help classical music, you know, look outwards more than it did before this.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a case in point. I think ENO were meant to be doing their Mozart Requiem on the stage with distanced audience. If they couldn't do that, they ended up being able to get it onto primetime BBC Two television. How fantastic. It made me think of, you know, back in the 70s when Lenny Bernstein was just sat at a piano on primetime TV talking about chord structures and making music understood by his passion. You know, why can't we go forward with that? Jazz, any Christmas wishes for Santa Claus?
Yeah, I wish from Santa something that has been a beautiful thing about this last, you know, not that it's been a beautiful thing, but something I cherish from it is the kind of sense of community and support from fellow like freelance musicians. And as a jazz musician, I felt before like my career in London was very much just like showing up to, you know, random club playing with like a trio you've just, you know, maybe met or just see once in a while. You have to quickly get a set list together, play a few standards and just this kind of like non-intimacy to the setting. But now, because it is, you know, so few gigs, and when we do have a gig, I'm often playing with the same people, like kind of Smitties or in the Jazz Refresh community and stuff like that. It's all, you all come across the same people and you've got big support for each other, I think. And you're like cherishing every second you have to play together, that one gig you've had in the past few weeks or whatever it is. So yeah, I do hope that even when things get back to normal, we still kind of have that mindset of cherishing, you know, every moment we have to make music together.
Absolutely. And more collaboration as well. Yeah. Why can't I sing over one of your tracks, Jazz, for example?
Exactly.
I'm not trying to get myself a gig, but I'm just, you know, I want to start dancing. Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I would love if we could kick the Tory government out for my Christmas wish list.
Tell us what you really think, love.
And you know, I make up a cabinet of you know, music lovers and sort of, you know, art lovers, and yeah, I mean, but yeah, I would love to attend a festival in 21. Just that feeling of just like, yeah, that togetherness, I think it is. I think that's all kind of, you know, weaves in all of our wishes, I think, is just I don't know, I'm seeing a field and I'm seeing people and I'm seeing smiling and I'm hearing music. That's what I want. Just that simplicity. And you know, like Jazz said earlier on, not only we're in the middle of a pandemic, but I think politically it's been absolutely intense. The whole, you know, Black Lives Matter, what's happening in America, what's happening here, like it's been one thing after another that we all feel extremely passionate about, want to make a change. And yeah, I mean, it's, I think, you know, what I'm trying to say is politically as well, that needs to be this boom, such a huge big change. But anyway, yeah, that with the feeling of one love, I think it's all related.
Brilliant. Let's get some t-shirts made. I think that's fantastic, and a lovely segue now into some questions from our respected colleagues and viewers. Let's keep our answers quite tight on this if we can, so we can get as many questions answered as possible. Here's one we'll start with for lovely Chris specifically. How has your workload been affected as a conductor? Has everything moved to a virtual model, or has a certain amount of your work gone into hibernation?
I mean, yeah, it's like there was a little window, you know, between lockdowns when I did some real life things with other people. But I mean, I'm not conducting. Essentially, I'm, you know, fiddling around with things on a computer and running rehearsals over Zoom. And I mean, within multi-story, we kind of made a decision that over social media, we were not going to be finding new audiences to the extent that we felt we needed to be doing to justify the work. So we kind of decided to focus all of our attention on our relationship with school children, and so we that's all been with kids, and all of my work has been running. They're called rehearsals, but they, you know, over Zoom, these rehearsals feel more like, you know, just like a big chat, and you they're quite, yeah. So running them and then sticking things together, and yeah, so the work side of it is completely different at the moment.
Mentioning young people there, I feel as if young musicians certainly are some of the biggest casualties in this, especially ones who are really hoping for these opportunities, which would have hopefully formed an early part of their careers. We have a question here. What advice would you give to youngsters looking to go into the performance industry as a musician? What do you wish you knew now? This is not necessarily just COVID related, but any words of wisdom? Gabby?
Say yes to everything. That's my major advice, as I've had to, again, very much over lockdown. It's just so important. You never know what opportunity is going to lead to a new venture. And yes, I feel very much for the youngsters, and for Jazz. It's your generation, I think, that are really struggling, actually, because you're just at the brink, you're starting out. And I think, yes, we just have to be diverse, professional, and keep the passion for music. Whatever happens, we will find a way, as we will have been doing.
Yeah, you're such a great poster girl for being a Renaissance woman. I love it. It's fantastic. Rakhi?
Yeah, to add to Gabby's thoughts, I would say engage with sort of remote recording and learning about technology and how you can record yourself, and therefore offer up more services for people. If you are inclined or think you'd like to do string arrangements, then start doing that. So you become more malleable and you have more skills to offer. Obviously, the higher the standard you require of yourself, the better, but do diversify into those areas if you can. Like, I'm having to teach myself about technology and stuff now, and being a little bit older, it feels a little bit slower. So I wish I'd engaged with that more when I was younger and sort of followed these things which I'm interested in, you know, arranging, improvising, and just sort of keeping yourself as open a musician as you can be.
Absolutely. And I think we're meant to be kind of quite digitally native as well. You know, I'm sure there's people who are more experienced and advanced in years than we are, who have struggled even more, or maybe learned even more skills. You know, that's definitely a positive thing. Jas, any advice to your colleagues, your contemporaries?
Yeah, definitely.
Hello. Oh, we
don't be afraid, not know something, you know. After...
Sorry, Donnie, we just lost you there. Your words of wisdom. Give us them again.
All right, I'll try again. Push yourself, you know, and don't be afraid to not know something. Ask questions, you know, learn as you go along. Like, it's a whole, as they say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, you know. Like, pace yourself. And the best advice I ever got was from Tolan Carrington, who's this female jazz drummer who I look up to. She's incredible. She's like, yeah, you know, come on, Gabby. Yeah, she's incredible. And I did a performance of her, said, you know, do you have any advice for that? Like, what, you know, how can I improve? And she's like, well, if you're smiling, enjoying yourself like that, you're going to be all...
Brilliant. I think we got the vibe of that, which was to enjoy yourself and don't be scared to look like you're enjoying yourself, as it's the best advert for the music and music making.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Something like that, exactly.
Lovely. Lisa?
Yeah, I'd say, like, always, like, work with everyone as well. So just that collaborative feel. Like, if you like someone, if you like what they do, get in touch. Always ask, you know, would you like to do something together? What is it we can do together? I think working with other people and constantly evolving like that, and learning from each other and getting the vibe off each other, and is the most important thing for me. I do love a collaboration and sort of working together to strive for one thing.
Absolutely, yeah. My advice would be to be yourselves. In in the end, I think we can all, especially if you're on a long trajectory, like we're talking, Jas was saying about a marathon, especially as if you're a classical musician or opera singer, we train for far too long, and we should really be, you know, doctors or something proper at the end of it. But we're just sat with our voices, and it's very easy to try and shapeshift and think about what it is that you would like to be for somebody else's means. What do they want from me? And actually think of where you started, because that's actually what makes you the most special, where you come from, etc. Here's another question, gang. We're nearly done here, so we'll try and get as many as we can in. An online piano recital at Wigmore Hall had 19,000 views, but only 4 people donated. Do you think there is a culture of grasping professional performances for free?
Clearly, it's evident in that.
Absolutely.
But then again, Ronnie Scott did, sorry, just to say, Ronnie Scott's had the same number, but then got thousands donated. So
Yeah.
it's a tricky statistic, because some people will donate more than the ticket price, and some people won't pay a fiver. So I think that's the thing that we're all trying to experiment. So it could be audience related with the Wigmore Hall, with age, with there's lots of different factors. So I think, yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yes, maybe not knowing how to donate.
Maybe. I wouldn't want to say it, Nicky, but you did.
Well, I said it because these things can be can be difficult for sure. And I think there are people that have actually gained in terms of luxuriousness during lockdown and have got more disposable income. So I guess we think of ourselves, because we're in a little bubble of people that may be struggling, but there are lots of people that will still pay for experiences. We have another question here. Watching concerts from the US on YouTube, I see almost all performers wearing masks, even solo singers and choirs. Oh, interesting. What is the panel's view on this, on mask wearing on the platform?
I think it would be very difficult to sing and have the sound quality through a mask. I think if you're at a station on the stage, or, you know, and we did something, but we were wearing masks all the time. But once you're at your station, you take your mask off, because you're, you know, socially distanced anyway. So I think to me, wearing a mask while singing would be quite pushing it a bit.
Absolutely. We can't quite hear your words, dear. Yes. Etc. Yeah.
Diction, darling, diction.
Yeah, diction, please. Have it and teeth. Gabby?
I think Stephen Islis just did a concerto at a mask in Spain.
Yeah.
And I think that was definitely a good point of his, that if it took wearing a mask in order for the concert to happen, he'll do it. I think, as Lisa said, what we have in place at the moment in the UK seems effective, that we're not allowed to walk around without one on, but when we perform, we take it off. I certainly find it's inhibiting personally for me if I have one on when I'm playing, even if I'm not singing. So that's my personal view.
I think we all want to be safe in the end, and anything we can do, especially to get as filled venues as we can, that we're all willing to do that. I did a studio recording of an opera just a couple of weeks ago, and all of the orchestra were wearing masks, and it can be prohibitive in terms of, you know, music making. And the opera we did at Glyndebourne, we actually made fun of the fact that we're all wearing masks. But most of these places, which are, I suppose, a celebration of what's possible, Wigmore Hall and Glyndebourne and lots of other places, they have got really good measures keeping people safe. And that's really important, I think, and that we share these practices so we can go forward and be safe. We're just running out of questions here. We've only got one minute to go. So I guess it just leaves me to say thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today and offering your different experiences. Coming up, we've got the next session. We have Lockdown Music 2, The View from the Venues, which will be really interesting, which starts at 2 p.m. It's likely to be a very lively and interesting discussion. And if you'd like to join in with us, please do pop your questions to us, or get onto Twitter and use the hashtag #EmpoweredMusician. That would be fantastic. And hopefully we'll see you all in live music venues very soon. But until then, on a music platform of your choosing. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having us, Nicky. Thanks for hosting.
Pleasure. Lovely. Thank you.